Have you ever wondered what would have happened if Po was reborn with all of his memories? How powerful would he become this time around? And more importantly, could he finally stop every tragedy before it ever happened? So, as Po is reborn, the very first thing he would see wouldn't be the Jade Palace or the Furious Five. It would be a small noodle shop and his father. This time, instead of growing up confused about who he is, Po would already know everything. He would know he's not really a goose. He would know he's adopted. He would know that somewhere out there, his real father is alive. But unlike before, he wouldn't panic or obsess over it because this Po already lived that journey. He already found peace with it once. However, being reborn with memories doesn't mean he'd be strong right away. Physically, he'd still just be a regular panda. So, for a long time, nothing would change. At least, not on the outside. On the inside, though, everything would be different. Instead of being lazy and clumsy, this Po would secretly train. Instead of playing with the Furious Five figures, Po would actually be practicing balance. And the most interesting thing is that, unlike the way it was in the original series, where he didn't believe it's possible, Po would actually know the right type of training to do to get him to reach his full strength. Every time he carried noodle sacks, he'd be training strength. Every time he tripped, he'd intentionally practice falling safely. To everyone else, he'd still look like the same goofy kid, but in reality, he'd already be laying the foundation of a kung fu master. An important part in this scenario, Po would know exactly when destiny comes knocking. He would know the exact day the Dragon Warrior is chosen. So, when the time finally comes and the entire valley rushes to the Jade Palace, Po wouldn't run there out of curiosity this time. He'd go there on purpose. And that changes everything, because when Master Oogway looks into the crowd, he wouldn't see a random panda falling from the sky. He'd see a panda staring directly back at him. Oh yeah, that also means he'd be early this time, unlike it was in the original. Sadly, we wouldn't get to see Po do all this cray stuff. He would be calm, focused, ready. Oogway, being as wise as he is, would instantly sense something unusual. This isn't a normal panda. There's experience behind those eyes. But yeah, he wouldn't know the real stuff going on. Anyways, Oogway would still choose him. Not by accident, Shifu. This one was certain. Now, from everyone else's perspective, nothing has changed. The villagers would still laugh. The warriors would still be confused. Some random guy just came out of nowhere and takes the title. And most importantly, Master Shifu would still think this is a mistake. But this time, Po wouldn't act clueless or scared. He'd bow perfectly and accept the title. That single action alone would already shake Shifu's expectations. But yeah, he still wouldn't accept him immediately. When they all go inside, Po would then try to tell them everything. He'd tell them he kind of knows everything that would happen in the future. Tai Lung escapes and all of that. But the others wouldn't believe and would call him a big fat panda who just wants himself to look good, taking out all the villains. What a joke, they would say. Even Oogway would find this amusing as well. Training would begin just like before. Except this time, Po wouldn't struggle. Even the famous Furious Five training chamber, or whatever they call it, would be an easy task for him to pass. To Shifu, it would feel impossible. It would look like this panda is learning at supernatural speed. But in reality, Po isn't learning anything. He's simply just remembering. Within days, he'd already be outperforming students who trained their entire lives. And that's when the timeline truly starts to break, because far away, locked in prison, someone else would feel it. Tai Lung. In the original timeline, Tai Lung escaped because he believed the Dragon Warrior had finally been chosen. But in this timeline, something would feel different. The energy, the destiny, the balance of fate itself would shift earlier than expected, meaning Tai Lung might attempt his escape sooner. Luckily, Po would know that. So, before the prison break ever happens, Po would secretly warn Shifu about it. At first, Shifu wouldn't believe him. But when Po calmly describes the prison, the guards, and even Tai Lung's fighting style in perfect detail, Shifu would realize there's no way this panda is guessing. So this time, they prepare. Extra guards, reinforced chains, masters on standby. And when Tai Lung finally makes his move, he'd still break free, but he wouldn't escape easily. Po would then tell the five not to go after Tai Lung, that he'd do it himself, but yeah, they wouldn't let that happen. But Po was already ready for that. I mean, they didn't obey freaking Shifu, so he'd go with them as well, secretly though. Since Po knows what all of the five would be cooked if they fought Tai Lung by themselves. He would help them all fight together, and although Po might not be at his peak strength, he'd be definitely stronger than the way he was at that time in the original story, meaning with the Furious Five added, they would be more than enough to take him down, and Po would finally send him home with the skadoosh. From here, events would continue shifting. Po would train faster, learn faster, grow faster. Not because he's stronger, but because he knows what mistakes to avoid. Here, Po has already found inner peace since he already knew what happened to his parents. And also, he knows his dad is still alive, so he wouldn't doubt himself. Soon, he'd quietly tell Shifu something else, something about Shen. Shifu would hesitate to believe him again. Until Po calmly describes the weapon designs, the wolf army. Being in shock that he knows about Shen despite never seeing him, Shifu wouldn't question him anymore. They would make preparations before time. So when Shen finally launches his invasion, they could easily sabotage him, probably before he makes his grand entrance in his hometown. All active kung fu fighters would be involved, making it much more possible for it to be a success. Yeah, sadly, we'd miss these epic scenes in this scenario. And this is where Po would start to realize something important. Every tragedy he remembers can be erased. Every loss can be undone. But the more he changes the timeline, the more unpredictable the future becomes. Because eventually there's one enemy even his memories might not be enough to stop. A warrior from the spirit realm, a conqueror of masters, a collector of chi, Kai. Unlike the others, Kai isn't bound by normal time. He exists beyond it, meaning Po's knowledge of the future might not fully apply to him. Still, Po wouldn't wait, and would try to learn more about Chi, and before that he'd try to visit his family, the Panda village. In there, he'd already be familiar with a lot of things they do, which would definitely surprise everyone. By the time Kai finally steps back into the mortal world, Paz has already mastered Chi. However, I think he'd let things go the same way as it did in the original, at least most of it, so he can take Kai back to the spirit realm. He'd also use his Dragon Warrior mode, even without the help of others. He'd try to do all of this outside or far away from his village, so there wouldn't be chaos and put anyone in danger. Po would finally put an end to Kai, meets Master Oogway again, and takes the staff. By this point, Po wouldn't just be strong, he'd be something far greater. A warrior who already lived an entire lifetime of experience. A master who learned from every mistake before making it. A protector who knows every threat before it appears. In other words, he'd be unstoppable. But strangely enough, all that power wouldn't change who he is. He'd still laugh, still eat dumplings, still make jokes, still trip sometimes on purpose, just to make others smile. Because even with all the knowledge in the world, Po would still choose to be Po. If you enjoyed this video, click on this one next, where we talk about every time cartoon heroes were wrong. Go on, check it out.